At the end of the engagement, 5 MiGs had been shot down without the loss of a single Israeli fighter. Finally, on August 7th, a ceasefire was concluded.
Even with the ground-to-air missile and the Soviets, if you don't know where are you going with your war, you cannot win a war. Air forces that do not operate like one fist to one direction in the same time cannot win.
When France imposed a delivery embargo on Israel, the IAF had just ordered 50 brand new Mirage 5s that were never delivered. However, thanks to the powerful Israeli intelligence service, Israel was able to get the plans of the aircraft and to build it under the name of Nesher. The fitting of the Phantom engine in the modified fuselage of the Mirage gave birth in 1972 to the Kafir C-1. Finally, in 1976, another derivative of the Mirage was produced, the Kafir C-2, which only slightly resembled the French plane. The C-2 was engaged in the Lebanese War, while the Nesher received its battle inoculation during the Yom Kippur War of October 1973. The Yom Kippur War was the first war in which electronic warfare was used to such extent. The Arab countries now operated the most modern Soviet aerial defense systems. Apart from the SA-2 guideline, which had been widely used in Vietnam and during the War of Attrition, another SAM, the SA-3 Goa, had been introduced. It was radar-guided and was much more efficient at medium and low altitudes. For the first time, mobile launch pads were used. They were harder to find and destroy than the SA-2 and 3, whose locations were well known. Despite their shorter range, these missiles caused the heaviest losses to the IAF. At the beginning of the war, which started with an Arab surprise attack during one of the most sacred Jewish festivals, the IAF was almost powerless. Deadly accurate SAMs shot down every aircraft that dared enter their area of operation, and the Egyptian land forces progressed with impunity. But as the war progressed, the IAF began to regain control of the sky. New maneuvers were used to escape the SAMs, and new technologies employed to jam them. The concept of electronic warfare took on its most full dimension. Joint operations between armor and aircraft managed to suppress many SAM sites. On October 24th, a new armistice was signed. On the night of July 3rd, 1976, the IAF led one of the most daring military operations ever. 1 week earlier, a French airliner had been hijacked and forced to land at Entebbe in Uganda. All Jews had been taken hostages, and the hijackers demanded the release of several terrorists. The Israeli answer was totally unexpected. Secretly, 2 C-130 Hercules took off, one of them with a group of specially trained commandos on board. The Hercules flew to Entebbe, and before the Ugandans could realize what had happened, the hostages were freed and taken back safely to Israel. In 1981, the IAF carried out another long-distance raid. Israeli jets overflew 3 enemy countries to reach the nuclear plant of Osirak near Baghdad. The plant was to produce plutonium, enabling Iraq to build nuclear weapons. The first deliveries of F-16s to Israel had taken place earlier that year, and the IAF decided to use its new bird for that delicate mission. The protection of the F-16 squadron was assured by McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagles. The F-15 had been in service with the IAF since 1977, and the Israelis had hesitated for a long time, wondering if they could really afford such an expensive aircraft. but the Eagle would prove that it was worth its price a year later, during the Lebanese War. On June the 7th, 1981, 8 F-16s took off from their home base, each of them carrying 2 tons of bombs. A nerve-wracking flight of 970 kilometers at low altitude over hostile territories led them to the Osirak reactor. The attack itself lasted no more than 2 minutes. Each Falcon overflew the target once and placed its load with extreme accuracy on the calculated spot. The plant was left completely destroyed. At the beginning of the 70s, the PLO had established its headquarters in Lebanon. Northern Israeli villages were shelled from behind the frontier by Katyushas, missile launchers that could reach a target 40 kilometers away. In '82, the number of attacks increased, and the villagers spent more time in shelters than at home. In June '82, the Peace for Galilee operation was launched. The army invaded Lebanon to chase PLO forces from the frontiers, and the Air Force was called on to prevent any enemy airstrike. Several F-15 and F-16 wings equipped their aircraft with Sidewinder, Sparrow and Shafria air-to-air missiles. Israel had informed Syria of its intentions, and Israeli pilots had strict orders not to fire at Syrian aircraft unless fired upon. Grumman E-2C Hawkeyes in service since 1978 would be used as flying observation posts. They were in contact with the interceptors and would guide them towards any enemy formations. At that time, the Arab states flew the latest versions of MiG-21, But most of all, they were equipped with a new Soviet swing-wing interceptor, the MiG-23 Flogger. On June 8th and 9th, masses of Israeli and Syrian aircraft engaged in an enormous aerial battle of World War I dimensions. But instead of light biplanes, these were the most modern and advanced jet fighters.